Today on Azure Tales, we bring you the story, Rebirth. In my second chance, I became a teenage millionaire. Let's go.
Johan was always known as Lobo, the man who did the dirty work for one of the city's most dangerous gangs. In his 33 years, he had accumulated a list of sins he preferred to forget, but he had never considered the weight he carried. He blindly obeyed the boss, fulfilling every order without question. However, loyalty came at a final cost when his boss, fearing Johan knew too much, ordered him killed. Johan's last breath was a mix of surprise and resignation. He believed that was the end. But it wasn't. When he opened his eyes again, he didn't recognize the surroundings. The bright light of a hospital lamp blinded him for a moment, while the rhythmic sound of a heart monitor filled the silence. He tried to move, but his body felt weak, unresponsive to his will. It was as if it wasn't his. That's when he realized something even more shocking. It wasn't his body. He now occupied the body of Mason, an 18-year-old who had attempted to take his own life due to years of cruel bullying he faced at school. The boy's memories came like an avalanche, showing endless days of humiliation, isolation, and pain. Johan felt Mason's deep sadness and, for the first time, experienced a type of suffering that wasn't connected to the world of crime. Recovering in the hospital, Johan discovered that Mason came from a well-off family. They weren't super rich, but they lived comfortably. Mason's mother, Summer, was a caring and attentive woman who, since the suicide incident, couldn't hide her worry. She visited Mason daily in the hospital, always asking how he was, trying to understand how to help. The father, a focused businessman, tried to balance work with caring for his son, appearing more distant but equally concerned. Johan decided that this second chance would not be wasted. He would change. Mason's young body gave him a new perspective, a new hope, but also carried the challenges left behind. First, he would need to deal with the schoolmates who had turned Mason's life into hell. Upon leaving the hospital, Johan began to rebuild Mason's life. He not only confronted the young man's aggressors, but also sought ways to transform the environment around him. Using the experience of his past life, Johan taught Mason and himself to fight, not with violence, but with courage and dignity. He approached people who had previously ignored Mason, formed bonds, and began to create a different future. However, by retaliating against the bullying Mason suffered, Johan ended up approaching a dangerous path. He discovered that some of the aggressors had relatives involved with the same gang he belonged to in his previous life. The desire for revenge began to consume Johan, and he found himself being drawn back to the violent world he had sworn to abandon. He began using his old skills to retaliate, but this placed him in an even greater moral dilemma. The confrontations began discreetly, with Johan dealing directly with Mason's aggressors. He used the cunning he had learned in the past to plan precise retributions, creating a kind of justice he felt was deserved. However, these acts drew attention. The aggressors' relatives began to investigate Mason's actions, intrigued by the change in the young man's behavior and the skills he demonstrated, so different from an ordinary teenager. Meanwhile, Johan also began to delve deeper into Mason's memories, learning about the boy's passions and dreams. He discovered that Mason had a talent for running, something he never had the opportunity to explore because of the bullying. Johan decided to use this as a way to channel his energy, encouraging Mason to train and participate in competitions. Running became a release, but the external conflicts did not diminish. Summer, always vigilant, noticed the changes in Mason's behavior. She was happy to see him more active and confident, but also worried about the moments when he seemed to distance himself emotionally. One day, she tried to talk. "Mason, you know you can tell me anything, right?" Summer said, with a look full of concern. Johan, in Mason's body, hesitated. He knew he couldn't tell the truth, but he felt something he had never experienced before, the weight of someone truly caring about him. "I know, Mom. I'm just trying to get my head straight, that's all," Johan replied, forcing a smile that didn't completely convince Summer. Over time, Mason's ties to the former gang members became inevitable. In a moment of tension, Johann had to decide whether to continue escalating the confrontations or try to break completely with that cycle of violence. However, the desire for revenge spoke louder, and Johann began to get more and more involved in direct confrontations. His behavior attracted the attention of the gang leaders, who began to investigate the young man with surprising abilities. The cycle of violence seemed inevitable, and Johann realized he was increasingly trapped between the past and the present. The choices he made now began to echo dangerously, leading to unpredictable consequences for both Mason and everyone around him. He knew he was walking on dangerous ground, but the feeling of justice, or perhaps revenge, pushed him forward. Meanwhile, Mason's aggressors, now aware of the change in the boy, also began to act more aggressively, escalating the conflict to dangerous levels. Johann, now fully involved, began to realize that past had never really died. And perhaps, just perhaps, he was about to discover that some battles can never be won.
And that concludes part 1 of the story. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and comment if you'd like to see part 2. See you next time, and thank you.